1970 WOCA.
Ocala.
Just about 5 minutes after 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. It's time to learn a little bit about the opportunities we have in our community to get a little bit more education. This is called Higher Education Happenings. We got a roundtable type of a discussion that we're ready to engage in. Mike Fallon is here. You've heard Mike on these airwaves before. He's the Community Relations Coordinator for Webster University, and he's invited some guests with him today. Let me make sure I have the names. Lisa Sickles is here, Financial Coordinator for St. Leo University. Good morning, Lisa. John Saviolis, am I saying your name right, John? Financial Aid Support Resolution Manager for St. Leo. Crystal Flynn, good to see you again. You were here before as well. Forgive me if I'm not remembering if you were here. Crystal is the Regional Campus Coordinator and Academic Advisor for the University of Central Florida. And Jean Imes is at the end of the table, way down there. She's the Assistant Director of Financial Aid at the College of Central Florida. So we're going to ask lots of questions and get lots of good answers, especially this time of year. I think the summer just began. So, but who? Good morning, Mike. How are you? Start with you.
Okay. Yeah, this issue, we want to talk about financial aid, paying for college. We've got a lot of great insight at the table. Now, our experts, they're the ones with financial aid in their title. Those are the actual experts. Crystal and I, we work with financial aid to a certain extent, but we want to talk about paying for college, how to pay for college, scholarship opportunities, financial aid, grants, paying back college, the value you get, the value you'll get from employability from college. So I think we wanted to start off with Jean because she is the Assistant Director of Financial Aid at the College of Central Florida. All right,
Jean, if this is a good time, obviously, to answer this question, but what age? What age do you start thinking about getting help or figuring out how you're going to pay for college? Do you start at kindergarten? Do you start at 10th grade? Where do you start?
That's a very good question. It depends on who your audience is. If you're talking to high school students, that junior or senior year, they really need to be focused in on getting things ready to go to college. If you're talking to parents, then there isn't a time that's too early. I purchased the prepaid college plans for our children when they were babies.
Really?
My oldest is 20 now, and I have 2 in college, and I'm really glad that we have them. So it depends on the audience that you're talking to, but I guess my best answer is it's never too early to start planning for financial aid and planning the ways that you're going to pay for that college education.
So let me ask you this. If somebody has purchased a prepaid plan and their child is an ACE student and is eligible for all kinds of grants at the end of their school years, what happens to that money you invested if it's not necessary?
Well, we talk about how financial aid options can stack up. And you still get that money back for college, and you might still get scholarships and other awards, et cetera. Those things stack up. Student might get a refund, and we encourage students to take that money and set it aside for the other expenses that come along with college. There's a lot of expenses and things that go with it besides just the tuition.
So let me ask you about the panic time. When it's getting close.
Yes.
You know, college is a year away, and you're not sure what you're going to do for your child, your son, your daughter.
Right.
Is there a way to kind of sit with somebody and say, well, help me out here? How do you do that?
Absolutely. If your student is still in high school, the high school counselors are always a great resource for the students. They are the greatest champions for the students to move on to that next step and help them connect with resources, scholarships, a variety of resources. And those of us at the table all have folks who are willing to sit down and talk with prospective students and say, let's map out a plan, let's see where you are, and figure out a way. Even if you're late into the game for your financial planning, there is a way to make it happen.
You know what I remember when my son was going through this was hearing words I had never heard before.
Yes, it's a new language.
Like a Pell Grant.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I'm supposed to know what this is, right? I'm supposed to know what a Pell Grant is. John, I heard that you were the guy to answer that question. What the heck is it? Is it an acronym, first of all? Pell?
Well, the Pell Grant is it's a need-based form of financial aid. So Department of Education has what's a calculation that's called the expected family contribution. So when a student submits their FAFSA, which is the free application for
Right.
federal student aid, okay, the student has certain responses on their FAFSA that are answered, and the calculation is the EFC. It's a number that calculates that generates a number that it, ultimately speaking, determines what the student's need-based federal aid is, and that's basically like gift aid because it's money that does not
So
need
that's
to be repaid.
the low-income family? Is that what you mean by need?
Well, it's the responses that the individual or the family provide to the FAFSA determine, and it's a variety of factors,
Right.
income, household information. So the way the responses calculate when the FAFSA processes through the Department of Education, this number generates. We are able to tell based on what's calculated, a table that's provided by the Department of Education, if a student can have that Pell Grant eligibility funding. And not only that, there's also a form of Stafford loans that's also considered to be need-based.
I remember
as well,
that word
which
too,
is-
yeah. So they get told no? What do they do? I mean, there's other
Well-
options?
As far as
Like if they apply for the Pell Grant,
Right.
and they're told, no, I'm sorry, you don't qualify, are they out of luck?
Well, no, there are Stafford loans, which are a little bit different because at some point in time, Stafford loans do need to be repaid. They do have interest charges, and it depends now for students in the state of Florida. For certain schools, there is we'll talk about the Florida Resident Access Grant. Students can go to the state website and also apply for some state grants, and then they may have that opportunity as well once they've submitted the application. So it's really a matter of if the school may offer, if there's certain private outside scholarships. I mean, like St. Leo on our website, we do have links that students can try to, research private outside financial aid sources or institutional scholarships. So it's not always just about the straightforward federal aid.
And the
or
governor
state
just
grant.
signed, I know it's a hot button topic, the children of the immigrants who are undocumented are now going to have the same benefits as the children who grew up here. I mean, it's no fault of their own. I agree with the governor. I don't know if you all do, but it seems to me it's not their fault. So now that's good news for them. Is that in effect already, or do they have to wait a year? Or is that something that happens like right away? You don't know?
Not quite sure.
Okay,
how
'cause
the schools
it's
are handling that. Those states
Okay.
are handling that
But
specific.
basically, it sounds like if you are a Florida resident, you are better off going to a Florida school, right? In general?
Well, I mean, if you want to be, in order to be able to perhaps have eligibility for certain programs,
Okay.
there are specific requirements. One of them is being a Florida resident, and so if you're going to be going to a school where you can be a resident of Florida and be able to still take advantage of this program, which will be determined by, once a student submits their application, then if a student can get the grant funds, I mean, as well, it's a grant, so it's only going to help them in the long run.
Okay. And a scholarship? Crystal, can you talk about scholarships?
Well, Jean mentioned a little bit earlier that you can stack different types of aid. So whether you qualify for Stafford loans or particular grants that apply to your type of school, whether it's a private or a public university, you still have the ability to stack different kinds of aid. And one of the most often missed types of aid is scholarships. One of the most critical things going into planning college is being financially literate, and scholarships need to be a component of that, understanding what you're borrowing as a whole, and then all of the other options on top of borrowing. Scholarships can provide a little bit of money or a lot of money. You can search for resources for scholarships by going to websites like FastWeb. You can also check out your individual university or school's financial aid website. Usually they have links on their websites that send you to university-specific scholarships. Another great resource that we talked about at a roundtable discussion is that connecting with your family members and talking to them about civic and other types of community organization and memberships to see if their membership in a particular organization has any benefit towards tuition. A lot of times, I think there was one that was a scholarship for Knights of Columbus. There are lots of different organizations that will offer scholarships related to a particular ethnicity, a particular regional area, a particular field of study. There are corporate scholarships if students are going into a particular track. Sometimes those are related to internships. So there are lots and lots of options. For UCF, for instance, we also have scholarship guides that we put in all of our campus libraries. So I've spoken before, we have 9 regional campuses all attached to state colleges, and then our main campus is in Orlando. So for every location where we are, in our library on that site, we have a notebook that has the most recent information on scholarships available to our students. And then there's lots of information online. The thing to remember about scholarships is that if you have to pay for an application, that's usually a warning sign. You want to be careful, you want to really investigate, because sometimes that fee for the application is what is generating an actual scholarship that may or may not exist. So always do your research. And at the end of the day, the best thing to do is be really, really aware of how much you're borrowing, what your scholarships are, and be very, very financially aware of what that debt is going to do at the end of your education. Going into employability when you're looking for a job, balancing out what you're going to have to repay. We had some figures that we looked at the other day that talked about a $50,000 debt in student loan, which can be kind of average these days for a bachelor's degree or higher depending on where you go. Depending on the level of interest and the type of loan it is, that amount can really, really grow to $70,000 or $100,000 as you repay it over 10 to 25 years based on your interest. So you have to add that in to the whole big picture when you're beginning to plan from the very first start.
Such a burden.
You need to know that first step of this is what I'm going to need to get through, and I need to be aware of it all the way through to the finish and until I'm going to start working, and it always needs to be there because you can't discharge student loans, you can't bankrupt them, you have to pay them. It's really, really critical. So one of the reasons, that's the main reason we came today, is to really make students aware of really, really researching, and their parents too, what all of those options are, so they're very aware of what they can utilize to help pay for college if they didn't prepare in advance, if they don't have Florida prepaid or some of those other things.
So I have a question. You mentioned, it sounded like if you have to pay for the application, that's a red flag.
In a lot of cases it is. A lot of cases it is. We talked about also, you mentioned FAFSA. There's also an additional FAFSA website that you pay a fee for. That is not the site that you should be using.
Oh, really? Somebody's making money off of something.
You always want to be sure it's the Department of Education's website or the Federal Student Aid website. ed.gov is always your.
And if you go to your
source.
university or college, usually they'll have a direct link to the correct site available for you because it's kind of rampant. And a lot of those sites that are not legitimate, they're going to charge you really exorbitant fees. I know Lisa was helping some students who had to pay.
The main thing you want to always remember is everybody wants to go to a .com. The .coms, when you're dealing with money, is not normally, as far as financial aid, is not normally a positive.
Oh, really?
The .coms
because it means commercial or something?
Yes.
You have to be careful.
Well, you have to be careful.
Right.
Like even the Florida State website is .org.
Right.
So, it's
It's research.
Oh, wow. I never even
be
realized that was like a way to know.
Yeah, it's all about researching. So if you have questions, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, if you're looking at something or your child, your student is looking for something, have them call the school where they're looking to attend. Speak with financial aid
That would make
representatives
sense,
there
right?
and
You just
say,
call the school.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at this scholarship. Is this a legitimate scholarship? Is this a legitimate website? And they're happy to help because the more headaches and the different things that can evolve from that, from a bad decision on a website that's not legitimate, can really impact you. You think you've done something and paid for something that's going to give you resources, and then you go to the school and you're stuck.
So whose credit line is looked at? Is it the parents, or I mean, usually a student doesn't have much of a credit history?
Well, that depends.
It depends. For student loans, if you qualify for what we call a subsidized loan, where the government picks up the interest, there is no credit qualification process.
Okay.
It's an entitlement based on the factors that he talked about, your household size, the number of students in your household in college, all those things. So there's not a credit check. if you want to stack on a parent loan, if you look at the package and you think, well, what the student qualifies for is just not quite enough, and we want to add a parent loan, there is a parent loan component that's available, but that part does have a credit qualification criteria built into it. So yeah, you've got students, unfortunately, sometimes who are not very credit savvy, who can get into quite a bit of debt in a hurry by just grabbing student loans.
And to a certain extent, even the graduate students, even though it's
Yes.
adverse, not having
Yes.
adverse credit history, there's also
Yes.
for graduate students as well that continue to borrow above what's considered to be the actual limit.
Do any of you work with
Forward.
veterans who've come, who've come back from
I think
Iraq?
we all do.
I deal, I'm a V, I'm
Are
the
they in a
VA
different category? Are they?
Well, they have other situations where, I mean, they get everything that all the other students get, but they can also they have their education benefits as well. So, but they have other forms to fill out as far as the VA is concerned. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
they only have 10 years to use their education benefits once they exit the military. And that's
Okay.
where they don't realize that they have other options, but they have to use them.
Right.
And I think that's another show that we're
10 years.
waiting as well.
We're going to
So-
do an entire show on
On that,
veterans.
okay.
Veterans, military, financial aid assistance, GI Bill, that kind of stuff.
The financial aids that we're talking about, are they accessible right here in Ocala? Do they have to? Does a student have to go somewhere else? Is it online on the phone? It's everywhere.
Most of it is online
Right,
that they
right.
they apply through fasfa.ed.gov for their
What was it again?
fasfa.ed.gov.
Oh, FAFSA. Okay.
And
And the first F stands for free.
It's the free.
Free, yeah, I
Free.
caught that.
It's
Yeah.
important.
Right.
Right.
For
Yeah.
federal
free.
student aid. So the federal student aid website is a great source for
Does-
students too.
Does the money that is either granted or loaned or obtained through a scholarship, does it apply toward the non-scholarship? The non-scholastic part of it, like room and board, or what? Books, other things.
Scholarships are different.
Well,
Right.
the federal part, when we calculate a cost of attendance in determining the budgets for the students, and it absolutely has a component in there for room and board, for travel, for books and supplies. So that is factored in to the overall need for the student when they're building that financial aid package.
And I just was reminded that I forgot to tell you something.
Okay.
For the listeners, if you have a question, we're not taking phone calls, but we're taking Twitter
Yes.
Twitter
Yes.
messages, tweets. And
Exactly.
so here's what you would do: you would tweet to Mike right here,
Right here.
Right.
and it's at Higher Ed Ocala.
At Higher Ed Ocala.
Okay.
Just tweet me.
So if you have a question, Mike will ask it on your behalf, but you have
Exactly.
to tweet it to
Yes.
at Higher Ed Ocala. Got it. Okay. I think
right.
I know Higher Ed. You should. Yeah. Does a student's income? Let's say a student is working, and is that student different than the student who is not working, or like in our world, if you're not working, you get a loan. Period. How does it affect the student?
Financially, it's completely different. So students,
Yeah,
and I think you can probably talk to this in you as well, but it depends. It's all about income. If I could throw one little piece in before you answer, one of the other things to remember, and we talked about it a little bit, is if you are a dependent, and I know you can expand upon this, a lot of times when I see students coming in and they're working with one of our enrollment team members, they're working on financial aid and admissions, and they're asked for their parents' tax information, and sometimes that throws up a red flag and they get concerned.
Yeah.
Can you throw that in as to why they would want that, so parents understand that that's okay, that there's a legitimate reason?
Right. The dependent and independent status really helps us know what household that we're looking at to look at the overall finances of the household, essentially. And for financial aid purposes, they don't work on the same criteria that, for instance, your income taxes work on. You can be independent on your IRS form, be that student who's working, paying their own bills. But financial aid looks at the family as the first resource for paying for the student's college education.
Makes sense, yeah.
So you asked the question about, does it matter if a student's working?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. We factor that income into the overall situation, but but it goes into the pot of the family resources that are available. The student's income, if they're a dependent student, we add their income plus the parent's income, and we still look at how many people are in the household, how many people in the household are going to college, those factors. So students are not penalized for working. We don't treat them any differently. We simply include that income as part of the household income in calculating financial aid need.
We've basically, I think, been talking mostly about the high school student entering college for the first time. What about the graduate student and maybe somebody even professional?
Sure. And at a graduate level, there are some scholarships, but your grants are pretty much over. By the time you get there, they figure, you have a bachelor's degree, you're okay. At a graduate level, federal financial aid is available, loans, and it's a competitive rate to those who qualify, and it'll get you through the program. If you want to pay out of pocket, you may, but once you're established in a career, a lot of times when you come back to graduate school, you finish your bachelor's degree, you start working, you're working for a company, you want to move up, you want to expand your horizon. There are tuition remission and tuition benefits through employers, which is great. It's a great benefit. So if you were to get some type of tuition remission, they may pay upwards of half of your tuition costs when you get to a particular level. So that's another option. We want to also talk about payback. Payback on student loans and salaries and employability by the time you get there. So we're talking about maybe borrowing $50,000 for an undergraduate degree, which, that some people just fall over on the floor and they couldn't believe how much money that is. But I want to tell you that in 2013, the unemployment rate in the U.S. for those with a bachelor's degree was 4%. Okay, huge. Those with a master's degree, 3.4%. So there's really two numbers that compared to the overall unemployment rate, the all-worker unemployment rate, 6.1, those with a high school diploma only, 7.5%.
So it's a huge, huge difference.
There's
It's a huge difference.
a big difference.
And
So-
it makes sense, too.
So you're spending a little bit of money that you'll pay back over time, but your employability
Right.
and your marketability in the job force is a little
Right.
bit higher. Also, real quick, and this is by the week. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the way. Those with a high school diploma, the median weekly salary was $651. Those with a bachelor's degree, the median weekly salary was $1,108. So, not quite double, but a significant difference.
You have an open house coming up. You want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. So we have an open house at the University Center at the College of Central Florida, and that's going to be on June the 18th from 4 to 7. And we'll have representatives from all the schools that are represented on higher education happenings. College of Central Florida, University of Central Florida, St. Leo University, and Webster University. We're going to have refreshments, door prizes, a lot of fun. Definitely check us out. It'll be a good night. We'll have a lot of representatives on hand to answer any questions with financial aid. And of course, there's also our Facebook. We're going to be posting about the open house on Facebook, facebook.com/higheredocala.
Okay. Can I ask one extra question? Can you switch tracks if you have the money for the school of your dreams, and then it turns out it's not the school of your dreams? Do you have to start from scratch, or can you laterally move the money over to another school?
Well, right. So the federal students have limits to certain amounts of the federal aid that they can receive. So they can, as a student is pursuing an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree, they have these set limits. So if a student wants to switch schools, they've still received potentially up to X amount of, funds from either the federal aid or state aid that at some point in time is going to wind up hitting an end number.
Okay.
So, students I would think they just want to keep track of where they are in their academic progress, with how much they've received, and sort of understand that in their budgeting that at some point in time, they may not be finished with a specific degree and they may have run out of those potential funds.
But they can't, let me add on to that at the end, but you certainly can change schools.
Right.
As a community college, we see that all the time. Students come, they spend 2 years at the College of Central Florida.
And
They
they transfer
transfer
to us.
on to
Right.
University of Central Florida, perhaps. You just notify the Department of Education, and your financial aid eligibility moves with you to
Right.
that new school. So absolutely, you can move it from one school to another.
And does the debt that you owe at the end of your education affect your ability to borrow for a house or for a car or for anything like that? Or
maybe.
Yeah, usually.
In some instances, it can.
Yeah.
It can.
Good.
But the most important thing to remember is that we all have team members. Either we're directly that team member or we have staff that work at all of our locations that can answer all of those questions for both prospective students and current students to help them plan ahead, even if they're in high school, or to prepare for down the road what they're thinking of. So we really strongly encourage them to come to open house and check us out, or come to the individual campuses, our location at University Center, and talk to the financial aid reps so they can learn more.
All right, excellent. We're just about out of time, Mike. We've got about half a minute left. You want to real quickly repeat contact?
Absolutely. So facebook.com/higheredocala. All the information for our open house will be there, but we were going to have it on June 18th at the University Center at the College of Central Florida. That's on the CF campus. There's directional signs to it, and we hope to see a lot of prospective and current students there. I think it'd be great.
All right, Mike, Lisa, John, Crystal, and Jean, thank you all for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will take a little break. Legally Yours with John Fuller is up next. Thank you, all of you. We'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The Tea Party reveling in the